Hello, recappers. Today's movie starts with a man named Paul marrying his girlfriend, Sophia. Everything looks magical and perfect, and Paul begins telling the story of how it all started. We learn that the story takes place in the 1990s. Sophia is a famous singer, and Paul is her biggest fan, completely obsessed with her. One evening, Paul shows up at Sophia's mansion. He's dressed nicely and holding a rose. Her bodyguard, Belle, looks annoyed. It turns out this isn't the first time Paul has done something like this. Lost in his own world, Paul claims that Sophia is his girlfriend. But Belle tells him to leave and threatens to call the police. Paul apologizes and starts to walk away, so Belle goes back inside. A few moments later, however, the doorbell rings again. When Belle opens the door, he's shocked. Paul is standing there with a knife pressed to his own neck, threatening to kill himself. Belle tries to calm him down, but Paul is losing touch with reality. He mistakes Belle for Sophia, pulls out an imaginary ring and proposes to him. Unsure of what to do, Belle decides to play along and pretends to accept the proposal. Paul gets excited, starts talking about wedding plans, and moves in to hug Belle. But in an unexpected turn of events, Paul stabs the bodyguard, leaves him bleeding, and excitedly enters the mansion. Sophia isn't home. But Paul doesn't seem to care. He roams through her studio, plays her piano, indulges in her bathtub, and has the time of his life. Meanwhile, Belle lies outside in critical condition until he finally loses consciousness, just as distant police sirens begin to wail through the night. The scene cuts to 6 months later. Sophia is at her mansion, relaxing with her casual fling, Rhodes, a famous basketball player. She is soon called by her assistant, Kaylor, who reveals that Belle has just arrived at the mansion. It turns out he has recovered from his injuries and is resuming his role as her bodyguard. Sophia rushes to hug him, revealing the sweet bond they share. In the following scene, we see a burly man named J.H., and Paul's voice is heard in a voiceover. He asks J.H. to pick up his parcel from the post office and prepare for their next move. Paul sounds excited and thanks J.H. for being part of the great journey he and Sophia are about to embark on. That evening, Sophia and Rhodes arrive at a lively pub, where they dance and revel in the carefree atmosphere. Meanwhile, Belle is at home when he learns from the news that Paul has escaped from the mental facility, along with another patient named Penny. Worried, he leaves his daughter, Abby, in the care of Aunt Eleanor and urgently heads to Sophia's mansion. Elsewhere, an excited Paul meets up with J.H. Alongside him is the equally unhinged Penny, whom he introduces as his assistant. Meanwhile, Sophia returns home at Belle's urgent request, only to be shocked by the sight of cops inside her mansion. Belle informs her that Paul escaped from the facility 2 hours earlier. On the other hand, the deranged trio is seen driving through the night. When Penny notices J.H.'s strange eye, Paul reveals that he once had a parasitic infection. They stop at an old man's house, where Penny knocks on the door. She claims her car is broken down and asks to use the phone. The kind man offers to check her car, just as we see Penny's sinister smile. The scene then cuts to Eleanor going about her chores. When she looks outside, she is horrified to see J.H. Belle immediately receives a call from her and urges her to contact the police. He then asks Rhodes to lock the mansion's doors before rushing off to protect his family. Not long after, Eleanor is visited by a goofy police officer. She nervously recounts the strange man who had been lurking outside, but the officer dismisses her concerns. He assures her that everything is fine and tries to leave, mentioning that he has an audition for a musical the next day. However, Eleanor refuses to let him go and insists that he stay outside to keep watch for their safety. Back at the mansion, a security guard monitoring the CCTV cameras is surprised to spot a large trunk outside. He goes to investigate, but at that very moment, the lights go out, plunging the entire mansion into darkness. The guard quickly heads back to his room. Inside the mansion, Sophia lights candles to illuminate the space, and a worried Rhodes asks her where the circuit panel is. The clueless singer doesn't know, so he grabs the candles and heads out alone to find it. Meanwhile, in the monitor room, the guard is searching for tools when Penny suddenly appears behind him. The unhinged girl grabs a flashlight and begins choking him, but he fights back and briefly gains the upper hand. After a furious struggle, Penny eventually overpowers him and finishes him off with a microwave. Now alone in the mansion, Sophia hurriedly locks every door and window. She lights a candle, and we notice a figure silently standing behind her. Meanwhile, Rhodes finds the power circuit, and the mansion is flooded with light once more. Paul immediately appears behind Sophia and hugs her, apologizing for abandoning her for so long. Panicked, Sophia shoves him away and begins hitting him with objects from the kitchen. Rhodes, still in the garage, hears the commotion. Sophia rushes to the front door, and Rhodes arrives on the other side, but she can't quite reach the latch. Unfortunately, Paul slams her into the glass, knocking her unconscious, while Rhodes watches helplessly from outside. Elsewhere, Bell finally returns home but doesn't see the police officer who is supposed to be keeping watch. He urges his family to pack their bags, insisting they need to head to the police station. The scene flashes back 1 minute earlier. We see the officer outside rehearsing for his musical audition. Suddenly, he notices that the chain on his bicycle has been stolen, just as J.H. sneaks up behind him. J.H. strangles the officer with the chain and lands a few brutal punches, silencing him forever. He then drags the body away and hides it nearby. Back in the present, Bell and his family get into the car, only to find J.H. already waiting for them. He points a gun at Bell, forces him to hand over his weapon, and orders him to drive to Sophia's mansion. Sometime later, Sophia regains consciousness and finds herself locked in her recording booth, with Paul sitting in front of her. He excitedly talks about their upcoming wedding. Sophia tries to reason with him, revealing that he is deeply traumatized. It turns out Paul lost his girlfriend at one of Sophia's concerts, which drove him insane. But Paul is unwilling to confront the truth and shuts her down, leaving her frustrated. Elsewhere, a desperate Bell pleads with J.H. to let his family go and handle the situation with him instead. But the big man is annoyed. He suddenly orders the car to stop, leads Bell a few meters away, and makes him kneel on the side of the road, then ruthlessly shoots him. Loud music is blaring in the car, so Bell's family doesn't hear the gunshot. J.H. returns to the vehicle and forces Eleanor to continue driving to Sophia's mansion. Meanwhile, Paul excitedly introduces Sophia to Penny, claiming that she also sings and plays piano, just like her. He leaves the two women alone to get acquainted and heads off to prepare for the wedding. Paul dresses in an elegant suit and opens a package to reveal a fancy dagger. With a sinister smile, he walks downstairs and eagerly greets Eleanor and Abby, who are being forced to attend the wedding as guests. On the other hand, Penny shows Sophia the wedding dress and compliments her body and skin. But she also expresses disappointment, saying she thought the singer would be more beautiful. Sophia seizes the opportunity and asks the psycho girl to bring her makeup bag from the bathroom, saying it will fix her face. Penny eagerly goes to fetch it. After that, Sophia exits the recording booth and grabs a guitar. She hides behind the door, ready to strike when Penny returns. But when she launches the attack, she is taken aback to see that it is Rhodes, who collapses unconscious. In the living room, Paul excitedly tells Abby that he wants her to be the flower girl, and that J.H. has already picked out a dress for her. The little girl, however, is curious about the noise coming from the trunk and asks if someone is inside. Paul gives her permission to open it, and to her shock, the trunk reveals the old man from earlier, the one Penny had asked for help and then attacked. He turns out to be a priest whom Paul kidnapped to officiate his twisted wedding to Sophia. Elsewhere, Sophia manages to wake Rhodes and apologizes for hitting him. But before they can say more, Penny and Sophia engage in a fierce struggle that ends with Sophia crashing into a piano. The crazy girl then begins to play and even invites Sophia to perform a duet, leaving her confused. Penny sings with such an angelic voice that it captivates Sophia, who can't help but join in. Meanwhile, Rhodes regains consciousness and is confused about what is happening. Moments later, Penny suddenly stops the performance and hits Sophia for singing off-key. She throws both of them onto the balcony, and they continue fighting. During the scuffle, Penny sprays Sophia with a flammable liquid and tries to burn her with a match. But before she can, Sophia attacks her with a sharp object and takes the opportunity to pour the flammable liquid on Penny instead. She flicks her lighter, and the psycho woman urges her to go ahead and burn her. But Sophia, being a normal person, can't bring herself to kill someone. Next, Sophia checks on Rhodes and tries to call the cops, But Penny suddenly reappears and attacks her again. The two get into another fierce fight, which ends with the injured Penny being shoved inside the recording booth. This time, Sophia shows no remorse. She lights a piece of paper and tosses it through the small booth window. Within seconds, Penny is engulfed in flames, while Sophia watches in horror. Overcome with guilt, she tries to help by using a fire extinguisher, but it's too late. Penny is already burned to a crisp. In the living room, the priest tries to reason with Paul, insisting that he is delusional and that none of this is real. But Paul refuses to believe him and heads upstairs to check on Sophia. Elsewhere, Sophia is tending to Rhodes, who weakly reveals that he saw a little girl earlier when he snuck in. This worries her, so she leaves him alone for a moment to find the child. Sometime later, Paul arrives looking for Sophia, but instead comes face to face with Rhodes. In his delusional state, he mistakes the basketball player for Sophia and begins complimenting him. Paul pulls out his fancy dagger and proudly talks about its significance. As Rhodes stares in disbelief, Paul suddenly kisses him, leaving the poor man confused. Meanwhile, Sophia anxiously asks Abby where her dad is. In a flashback, it is revealed that J.H., the one-eyed man, was unsure whether the bodyguard was actually dead. The movie then cuts to the next morning, when Kaylor finds Bell lying on the side of the road and wakes him up. It turns out the bullet only grazed his head, and he is still alive. He takes Kaylor's car and immediately drives toward the mansion. Upon arrival, he notices the mansion is in chaos, and no one is in sight. Bell stumbles upon a wedding invitation and realizes they have already left. In the next scene, everyone is at the church preparing for the wedding. Bell is also on his way and urgently calls the cops. Inside the church, Sophia is ready to marry the psycho out of fear. But Paul, still delusional, mistakes her for someone else and asks her to take a seat before his bride arrives. Soon, the ceremony begins. Abby makes her entrance as the flower girl and scatters imaginary flowers. Moments later, the room falls into stunned silence when Rhodes appears, wearing the wedding dress. At that moment, Belle arrives and takes Rhodes' hand, walking him down the aisle. After leaving Rhodes at the altar, Belle greets the guests and subtly slips a knife into Sophia's hand. As the priest begins the ceremony, J.H. interrupts and informs Paul that his bride is a black man, not Sophia. However, Paul doesn't listen and tells him to shut up. The priest proceeds and announces them husband and wife. An excited Paul kisses Rhodes, and we flash back to the opening scene where he was seen marrying Sophia. It becomes clear that all of it existed only in his mind, because in reality, Rhodes is standing before him. After kissing for a while, Paul suddenly loses control and stabs Rhodes in the stomach. Rhodes falls to the ground, and everyone is shocked. Belle quickly knocks Paul down. Then Belle pushes J.H.'s head into a pool of water while Paul watches everything fall apart. Sophia steps forward, grabs Paul's dagger, and finally, Paul sees her clearly. He tries to apologize, but Sophia kicks him hard in the face. Suddenly, J.H. grabs little Abby and holds a gun to her head. He demands that Belle hand over the dagger. Belle, terrified for his daughter, gives it to him and begs him to let Abby go. Just when things seem hopeless, Rhodes, though badly hurt, cuts J.H.'s throat, killing him. Meanwhile, Paul remains lost in his fantasy, imagining that he and Sophia are walking away from the church, happily married. After all this, the police finally arrive. Sophia asks Rhodes if they should give their relationship a real try. He jokes that they can't. He's a married man now. Elsewhere, Belle tells Abby he is quitting his job as a bodyguard because it is too risky for the people he cares about. In the final scene, Paul is taken away in a police car, but in his mind, he believes it is a fancy limo. He happily talks about their honeymoon and asks to be taken to the Hilton Hotel. Then reality hits him, and the movie ends with Paul breaking down in tears, realizing what he has done. And that's how the story ends. What did you think about the ending? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next breakdown.